Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday Talking Points. My name is Carrie Simpson. I am the CEO of Managed Sales Pros, and today we're going to be speaking with Jeff Benedetti, Jim Turner, and Tracy Risco about business continuity prospecting strategies. I'm just going to let everybody get organized and settled. There's still a few people working their way into the room right now, so let's wait one more minute for everybody else who's arriving to get in, and then we'll begin. All right, looks like everybody who's going to join us today has joined us, so thank you again for joining us. For those of you who's just come in, my name is Carrie Simpson. I am the founder and CEO of Managed Sales Pros, and Managed Sales Pros came from my 20 years of outbound prospecting experience. We make over 60,000 cold calls a month here. We schedule over 300 sales appointments every month. And I think the most important and interesting feature is that we have been able to grow a service-based business that relies on monthly recurring revenue from $0 in monthly recurring revenue to over $250,000 in monthly recurring revenue in under 3 years. And we've done that, while staying debt-free. We were self-funded, so we did all of this by cold calling, and we're excited to share with you a little bit more about how we were able to do that for ourselves and how we do that for our client base. Today we're very fortunate that we are going to be joined by Jim Turner, who is the CEO of Hilltop, and Jeff Benedetti, who is the sales director for Datto, and they're going to share a little bit about how they use cold calling to build their client practices as well. I'm going to begin with some housekeeping. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a panel, and you can use that panel at any time to chat with us. You can ask us questions, and please, if something isn't working, let me know. If somebody just wants to raise their hand right now and let me know that they can hear me okay, that would be fantastic. And the GoToWebinar, oh, interesting. Okay, I do have one technical difficulty. People have mentioned that the GoToWebinar control panel is blocking the slides, so I'm going to see if I can fix that. Is that any better, Ed? Thank you. No. My apologies for that. I'll see if I can figure that out. Guys, I'm working on fixing that for you. The right arrow in the orange box. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. We should have this figured out quickly. How's that? Better? Hooray! Thanks, everyone. All right, now of course the questions are blocking my view. So what are we going to talk about today? I've got a full agenda. We're going to talk about why we're still using cold call prospecting, how selling managed services is different from other types of sales processes, how you can structure your sales prospecting calls for maximum value and impact, how to sell ideas versus selling products. We're going to talk a little bit about thin wedge selling, how to use business continuity as a thin wedge, how to transition those business continuity wins into managed services agreements, and then we're going to share with you how Datto helps their partners win more business, and we're going to close out talking a little bit about how Managed Sales Pros helps their partners win more business. I'm going to ask you to please hold your questions for the panelists until the end of the webinar, especially with our little technical difficulty with the GoToMeeting screen popping up and over the slides today. I'm going to keep that minimized for the duration of the panel discussion and open up the floor to questions. So go ahead and type those questions in as you have them, and I'll make sure to deliver them to the appropriate person at the end of the webinar. All right, so let's meet our panel today. Jeff Benedetti is the sales director for Datto, and he is responsible for executing Datto's North American new business strategy. He's been in sales and management roles solely in the technology market for over 13 years. And at Datto, his goal is to provide a best-in-class educational sales experience to managed service providers with the goal of onboarding those organizations as Datto partners. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for agreeing to join us today.
Definitely.
Now, Jim Turner is the founder and CEO of Hilltop Consultants, an MSP that generates over $6 million per year with offices in Washington, D.C. and Atlanta. And over the past 13 years, Jim has grown his monthly recurring revenue to an impressive $400,000 a month. Hilltop is an elite Datto partner, and they have over 100 terabytes of data stored in the Datto cloud. Jim Turner was also a client of Managed Sales Pros, which makes him an ideal participant on today's webinar. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Carrie. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And our third panelist, somebody that I know very well, Tracy Arisco, president of Managed Sales Pros. So for those of you who don't know, Tracy was employee number 2 at Managed Sales Pros, and I had to beg her for about a year to come and work with us. She was promoted to president in 2014, and Tracy is responsible for overseeing the fulfillment of all of our cold calling programs, and that usually includes the training and management of our managed services cold calling team. She also built and manages our vendor business continuity practice, and she holds the record for the highest number of sales appointments scheduled in one day by a managed services cold calling rep. That current number is 8. Nobody has beaten it yet, and while doing all of this, she's still managed to grow our book of business by $1 million in the last year. So Tracy's a busy person, and listen up because she's got some valuable stuff to share. How are you doing today, Tracy?
I'm great, Carrie. Thanks for the intro.
How's the weather in Dauphin?
It's sweater weather.
Very nice. We don't get a lot of that out here right now. All right, so we're going to start with our first question today. And that question is, why are we still using cold call prospecting for business development? I think, Tracy, we're going to start with you on that question.
Okay. So as Carrie mentioned in the intro, for those that were here at the very beginning, we made over 60,000 cold calls this last month. In the same period back in 2014, we made 3,000 cold calls. So we've grown our practice through cold calling. We know a thing or two about how to do that. So we used cold calling exclusively here to grow about 900% our first year. And that was just Carrie and I being part-time cold calling around growing our business. In the first year, we had 0 referrals, so we grew right through cold calling, and we continue to do that today. While there's money now on the table and allows us to deal with different marketing opportunities, still cold calling remains our #1 way to grow business. We believe that getting out there on the phone is an integral part of the business from the ground up. So our callers do it, our management does it, and we do it. And we're going to talk a little bit more today about why that is.
All right, and Jim, obviously you saw the value in cold calling. You've been a Managed Sales Pros client for a while, and you've recently hired in-house to fulfill that role. Tell us a little bit about how you came to the conclusion that cold calling was still a place that you wanted to focus your time and your investments.
I felt that cold calling was something that, as a business owner, I could evaluate the effectiveness of the campaign pretty easily, because either we got an appointment or we didn't. So many other forms of marketing that we use whether it's SEO or search engine optimization or PPC, pay-per-click advertising. You know, you're investing money into these campaigns, and your marketing team tells you how effective you are because you had X number of views. But if you didn't have an appointment, did it really, you know, you did get an appointment set, did it really help you? At least when I work with managed sales pros, I know if I pay a certain amount of money and I get a certain number of appointments, I can measure the effectiveness. With my other forms of marketing, it's just a lot more squishy, and that's why I like the cold calling.
Great. And Jeff, I mean, Datto obviously reaches out to potential new partners using cold calling on a regular basis. Tell me a little bit about how you go about doing that there and why you continue to do so.
Yeah, our cold calling strategy and our outbound phone call strategy is a big connection point for Datto and our potential new partners. We take a lot of pride in consistently reaching out, trying to educate our partner base or our prospect base on the new Datto updates, whether it's new product release or new pricing, and engaging managed service providers, very busy group, and really the only effective way to execute a strategy is by being on the phone.
That's what we like to hear. Thank you. All right, so our second question today, and we get asked this one pretty regularly: how is selling managed services different from selling other products or services? Now, personally, when I started Managed Sales Pros, I had owned a business that provided outbound cold calling services to other types of business. We started Managed Sales Pros on a referral from a company that sold marketing solutions. So before we started Managed Sales Pros, we had a business called Cold Calls, and we worked for a dozen different types of businesses. And I could tell you right out that selling managed services is very different from selling other types of solutions. And one of the things that I've noticed the most is that a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, back when the idea of managed services was very new, selling it was much more similar to selling any other service. Now that everybody has a solution in place, selling managed services, the landscape of selling managed services has changed. So even our processes and programs have changed over the course of 3 years to adapt to the fact that quite often there is an incumbent provider. You are a technical person trying to sell to non-technical people, and that's going to bring with it some special challenges. Tracy, can you share with us a little bit about how our programs have changed and adapted over the last 3 years and how we've noticed selling managed services to be different from selling other solutions?
Okay, so I think that what Carrie is alluding to is that over the past 3 years we've changed the way we've done business because we understand the managed services field better. The more we understand, the more we realize that this is a long game. It's not a quick grab. So displacement versus disruption is something that we have spent a lot of time educating and refining ourselves on and building that into our programs. When we first started, we thought this was a shorter game. We were engaging in 90-day contracts and appointments were coming through and things were deemed as successful. But what we've discovered as we've gone along that it's really the end game that matters. So if you're looking at disruptive activity. If you want to define disruptive, it indicates a high level of impact or change upon user implementation. Not the level of market readiness, but how that is going to change and move forward. Products are only disruptive when they're purchased and utilized. Until then, they're just sort of theories and ideas. And what we've discovered is that the sales cycle on managed services is a lot longer than sales cycle for other verticals. And so while we were engaging in 90-day contracts in the beginning, we discovered that people weren't closing until longer down the line. And as we did case studies, we realized that what we needed to do was create a longer-term program that dealt with prospect nurturing from the first cold call right through to full sales qualified appointment sets, and bringing those things to managed services plate in ways that let them be completely ready to win that business in a quicker fashion.
So instead of sending the marketing ready leads, we've attempted to take those leads right through to being sales ready leads. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so Jim, you firsthand experienced working with managed sales pros on a program. Can you share a little bit on, I mean, you had a couple of quick wins there, but I think that what Tracy was just describing was something that you experienced as well. There wasn't a lot of conversion at the beginning, and it's a major investment to make to hope that something's going to pay off down the road. What can a managed service provider do to better ensure that their investment in something like a telemarketing campaign is going to pay off for them long term?
What I found was that after the appointment was set, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but I think it's a good point, so I want to mention this. We found that once the appointment was set, that it was to our advantage to have frequent conversations, communications with the point of contact that we were meeting with prior to the meeting. If we didn't do that, we often weren't on the same page with the prospect when we got there as far as what exactly they were looking for. The appointment setters are good. Just the fact that they can get us in front of them is very helpful. But they're not necessarily experts in everything that we do. They can read and they can see what we listed as our services. But I guess a great example would be talking about the cloud. If they have a prospect that says, well, I want to talk to somebody about the cloud can mean something different to different people. So when we got the appointment set, I would reach out to the point of contact and thank them for setting the appointment and ask them, hey, can we have a quick phone call to make sure that I'm clear on what you're looking for? Your time is valuable. I want to make sure that we make the most of it when we meet. And I found that was very effective. And Carrie, you don't know this one yet, but that last lead in Atlanta that was a cloud type lead is finally coming to fruition. And that was one where I had to get the guy on the phone because it started that he was interested in the cloud, but it became a much longer process, and we sold him a voice over IP system because the phones were actually more of a priority once we went on site and met with him. So having that communication after the appointment is set, not just assuming that you're going to show up after the appointment is set and close the deal. So while you touch on the fact that it's a longer term process, we can agree with that, and it's not just from the perspective of the cold caller that it takes maybe several calls and a couple of months to get that appointment. But even once you get that appointment, you want to make sure that you have that communication to get that deal closed.
So I think that's an excellent point. I think quite often companies begin a program with us or with one of our competitors or in-house where they kind of expect that it's going to be a hands-off, set it and forget it experience where they are not going to have to involve themselves in the day-to-day operations of that program. But it turns out that the more tuned in and the more you're paying attention and the more you're guiding that process and getting involved with what your market is asking of you, the more you're going to close at the end of that process. Jeff, when you have a new MSP come and join Datto as partners, do you help prepare them for outbound prospecting in any way?
Yeah, so here at Datto, the support that a new MSP or a current MSP receives from our sales and marketing team is a huge part of our partnership. We have a tool called Datto Drive that is intended to be a marketing tool for our MSPs. While it's a strong, a strong platform, we want our MSPs going out and using Datto Drive and our other marketing materials to really help them engage with their prospects. And what's big about some of the things that Datto does, and we try and echo to our partner base and our new partner base, is that connection point with whether it's selling business continuity or if it's selling managed services. It's really the connection point between the prospect and the company. So why are you calling? What are you looking to accomplish, and what's the value you're bringing to your meeting or to your, your first touch, to your first prospecting call? But there definitely is, support in regards to helping our partners, especially our new partners, learn how to not only pitch Datto, but support in helping them evolve their business, whether they're coming from break fix or they're in managed services.
Okay. So the next thing I'd like to touch on is, how do you structure MSP sales calls for maximum value and impact? And there's a couple of things that I'd like to tee up here. And one of those is, we've just kind of touched on this a little bit, but selling an idea versus selling a product. So there are two ways that you could approach the market to sell them something. And the first is, you could conceivably, if all you wanted to do was sell backup, like you could go to the market and just sell business continuity. You never even have to discuss managed services or IT support. You could sell one thing to the market over and over and over again. And what we found quite often, when we're developing our campaigns, whether the MDF has been provided by Datto or by another vendor, where they are obviously providing you with some incentive to sell their product for them, you really don't want to open up the conversation with a product-specific pitch. And here's the reason for that. When you approach the market with one product, you present yourself as an expert in that product and that product alone, meaning if that product isn't going to solve the pain that they're experiencing currently, it's almost automatic that they'll discount you as a provider for the other offerings. So if I go to you and say, hey, do you need backup? And you say, no, we have backup. If you come back to me afterwards and say, but wait, I sell this, this, and this as well, then it looks kind of like I'm scrambling to sell anything that I can versus, that one thing that I presented myself as an expert on. So what we suggest here is going in to sell an idea. And the idea is worry-free IT. The idea is IT that works all the time without you having to wonder why it's working or how it's working. So Tracy, can you share a little bit about how we structure those programs? How do we structure that conversation so that we go in trying to win the highest ticket value item that the IT provider can sell, that managed monthly recurring revenue agreement?
Absolutely. So each call, as you guys will know, for anyone that's done their own cold calling, each call is unique into itself, and we allow the prospect to guide that call. So our team goes ahead armed with 3 pages of what we like to call talking documents rather than scripts that allow them to follow the conversation where the prospect wants to lead. So as Carrie mentioned, going in with a broad brush to determine what is happening in their environment. We're not giving them pain opportunity to review, we're asking them what happens. So the conversation may begin with, tell me about the size of your environment. And as we determine whether they're a 20-seat or a 100-seat prospect company, we then structure the conversations around, how are you currently receiving your support? As they go through what their current process looks like, pain points begin to fall out. If you give people the opportunity to tell you about challenges, which is the word we would normally use, we don't ask them what they don't like, we ask them what their challenges are with their current mode of support. And then we begin to build from there into the thin wedges that we're going to talk about in a little bit that allow us to get a foot in the door to talk about what are they currently seeing challenges in, and we build a conversation around those challenges to help them understand how a managed contract may be able to solve those while still keeping the door open for a discussion with the client on specifically what are their current pains. We don't want to close the door because you will walk away leaving money on the table. We also want to make sure the prospect understands that we are a managed service provider and the goal is to have a conversation surrounding that worry-free IT, but we would like to specifically address how can we, as a company, or the client as a company, fix some of those problems for them while they're working their way towards a managed contract. Does that answer your question, Carrie?
Yep, that's great. And Jim, maybe you can shed some light on this one as well. So when you're creating an outbound program for your MSP, you have 2 cities in play there. What percentage of business do you feel that you win right off the bat, managed versus through thin wedge selling. So how often do you win the managed contract the first time you ask for it versus how often do you start your relationship with a smaller sale?
In our case, very few of our wins aren't what we initially approach for. We generally approach with full managed services, and it's rare that we don't get the managed services and then we come in with a smaller service, whether it be a Datto or a voice over IP or anything else. We usually find that from the time that we have the first conversation with the client and we've figured out what it is that they're looking for, that then we may approach them with a thin wedge item like Datto or another solution for something on their network. But generally, we like to know what they want to talk about before we go in. So we don't often find that we have to adjust what we're trying to sell because we know what they're looking for. Now that being said, we're able to figure out, primarily by the size of the client, whether or not it makes sense to approach with full managed services or to approach with another item. And that you get out of the initial conversations just when you're talking about what's the head count and whether or not there's in-house IT. So in our case, we're very heavily verticalized in the legal vertical,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that if there's a 150-person law firm and they've got 15 IT guys, that I'm not going to go in trying to sell a full managed services deal from the beginning. But I will approach with the Datto solution because those IT guys probably don't like the current backup system anyway, and it probably makes them nervous, and they'd be happy to have somebody take it over for them.
So let's talk about that just a little
sense?
bit. Yeah, I want to laser focus on that for a minute because that's something that here at Managed Sales Pros, we don't do that often. We would not often run a product-specific program to a specific vertical. So tell us a little bit about how you're achieving success promoting Datto to those larger opportunities.
So generally it's with the help of Datto, actually, through marketing development funds. We're a Datto Elite partner, so Datto helps us with our marketing initiatives. And something that we've been doing there is hosting backup disaster recovery business continuity lunch and learns, where we have people from firms come into our office and eat lunch, and we talk to them about disaster recovery business continuity. Also, what we'll do is we'll attend industry or vertical specific events. Most states or major metro areas have associations of legal professionals, whether it's the Bar Association or something similar, and we'll go in and host an event with the members of those organizations, and when we tell them how we can prevent downtime and improve productivity and protect their data, protect them from malware, they're generally very receptive to that conversation. And often at those events, it may not be the IT guys that are attending. The IT guys aren't coming in for the lunches, but the managing partners, the firm administrators are coming, and they're saying, hey, you need to talk to my IT guy about that because you know what? We just had crypto locker last week, or we had unplanned downtime that was a real problem for us. You need to tell them, I need my guys to learn about this backup solution. So if you can get decision makers at a table and you can talk to them about the solution or show them one of the demos, whether it's an online demo or you show them a box or whatever it is, it generates enough interest that you're able to have them connect you with the IT staff, and then your foot is in the door. And I'll give an example, and it was not legal vertical, but we, over the past 6 months, we took a client that initially had a consultant that had been working with them for probably 20 years. and he was doing all their IT. And he brought us in just to do the backups. And eventually it was time for this guy to retire, and we were the right vendor in place because we were managing the backups. We were also working with them on their Office 365. And when this guy was ready to retire, his recommendation to the CFO of the firm was, well, Hilltop's already doing this stuff for us. You should talk to them about taking over for me, rather than going out and finding another vendor that didn't already have their foot in the door and didn't already know the network. So that was it. We were able to grow that from a Datto and Office 365 deal only to full managed services, and that client, I think, is somewhere around $11,000 a month. So that was a great win for us.
Yeah, that's a fantastic win. So what I'm hearing, to summarize, would be that you would approach different sized companies differently. The first, that under 100 market, you would approach with a managed service opportunity, and then the higher headcount firms that already have in-house IT in place, you would approach with a thin wedge sell like the Datto solution. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Sounds like it's going pretty well for you. That's a beautiful win.
Yeah.
And Jeff, can you share a little bit about how Jim was able to engage with Datto to make that happen? It sounds like being an elite partner has some extraordinarily good benefits.
Yeah, definitely. You know, there's our partner tiers are broken out to support our partners across you know, the needs of their business, right? So really the goal of what Datto is trying to accomplish is, you know, total data protection wherever it lives. And on top of that, it's really reacting to our partners' needs. So whether that's marketing content, whether that's, you know, the expertise of one of our sales engineers, whether that's a lunch and learn, it really varies on what our partners are looking for, and that's the goal of our sales team, is to support our partners. We're here to help the greater partner group.
And I understand that there are some documents available to MSPs on your website for download that will help them. There's a series called MSPZ currently.
Yes, MSPZ, yes.
So when we send out the slides after the event, perhaps we could add that link so that the MSPs know where they can go to download that, and they could more clearly present that messaging. It sounds like Jim has really mastered the art of delivering that message to his target base. So
for sure, yeah. The MSPZ series is really to help our partner base and our prospective partner base sharpen their tools, right? So from sales, marketing, into pricing, we're trying to support the community with as much content as possible, and you know, even our Datto blog, which I recommend the partner base you know, signing up for. There's a lot of really impactful information there as well.
thanks, Jeff. I think that we touched on this question pretty good in the last question. We went over scope on the last one some, so I think we really covered when it would make sense to sell a product instead of a service. We touched a little bit on, you don't want to walk away empty-handed. If you're going to go in for the managed services ask and you're not going to win that business just yet, it makes sense for you to come back and then approach them with the idea of a product sell like Datto. Or when you know flat out that managed services is not going to be on the horizon based on the headcount, it would make sense to approach that prospect with a different idea, again, like that Datto sell. So now I want to talk a little bit about thin wedge selling, although I mean, we've kind of touched on that over the course of the last few questions. So again, thin wedge selling to me is the idea that you want to put just that slightest amount of doubt in the mind of the prospect that you're calling that their current solution provider is getting it done for them. So that's one definition of thin wedge. And then the other definition of thin wedge is, how do you make sure you can keep that door open just the slightest amount so that when somebody says, hey, we're not interested, you have the ability to come back and approach them again with another idea. So Tracy, I'm going to take this one back to you. when we're doing objection handling for managed services, for example, when somebody just shuts the conversation down and says, we're not interested, how do you go about handling that objection with a thin wedge?
So we all know that the phrase, we're not interested, or we're fine, often is a shield against something. So it's like when my husband asks me how I am and I say I'm fine. Probably he's done something wrong, I just don't want to talk about it yet. So the same concept applies in cold calling for managed IT. When the caller reaches out and the initial response is, we're fine with that, we come back at that with, great, sounds like your needs are being met currently. Are you engaged in a break fix or a managed arrangement? We acknowledge the fact that they are fine and not looking, but we want to keep them talking. We want to have them thinking about that. And if the answer to how are you getting your services is I'm not sure, we walk them through the differences between managed or break fix. We get them thinking about what's currently involved. And then we begin, if they are chatty, and as long as you are not pushy, people tend to answer your questions. And the rule of thumb here at Managed Sales Pros is when they answer one question, you get to ask another one. And that game continues until they stop answering. So the beginning discussion is around, okay, you're fine, great. You have a managed provider, tell me what you really like about them. We would love to be able to throw our hat in the ring when the time for renewal discussion comes up. What do you like about them? And dollars to donuts, which is a Canadian phrase, I don't know if they use that in the U.S. When they tell you about one thing they like, they're going to tell you about 5 things they don't. And so at that point when the conversation starts, the caller's job is just to close their mouth and to listen and take copious amounts of notes that will allow us to begin to pick apart those thin wedges and build our way in that door until we can kick it all the way open. That might not happen on call 1. This might be a series of conversations and calls, and when we go back and look at what led to an appointment, we take every piece and every call into account. So maybe the first conversation is, we're fine, and the resulting conversation is, our contract is up for renewal in 6 months. That's a valuable piece of information that you got, even though they said they were fine. I'm fine is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of it.
I think that's a great point. One of the things that I'd like to touch on here based on that is once you've begun calling in a market, you're going to get to know your competitors really well. You're going to start understanding where they're outperforming you, where they fall apart, where they struggle, what people like about them, what people don't. So while you think about that thin wedge and keeping the door open and driving that wedge in between the prospect that you're calling and the solution provider that they're currently working with, you should be able to begin picking at threads just based on what you know about the market. So if you know that, company 1 always falls down on onboarding and they say, yeah, we're great, we're working with Joe's IT, and they're great. Like, oh, how was your onboarding experience? Odds are 9 times out of 10, if you already know that they fall down there, you're going to be able to start driving that wedge in using that flaw. Like the minute you know where your competitors are failing, and you're going to learn that by making hundreds and hundreds of calls every day, you're going to be able to start driving that wedge in based on where you already know, based on their reply, that they're not getting the service that you know that you could provide them with. So that's one part of thin wedge selling, is how do you start driving that wedge in between the solution provider that's working with them and the business that you want. And the second part of thin wedge selling is, again, not walking away empty-handed. How can you sell them something so that you remain top of mind for the next 4 quarters while you wait for them to renew their agreement? So now we want to talk a little bit about properly positioning business continuity as that thin wedge. So there's a bunch of reasons perhaps why an organization wouldn't have made an investment in appropriate business continuity. Jim, can you think of a couple of situations where a company said, like, hey, we're fine, and only for you to then uncover that they weren't having their bases covered properly?
Oh, sure. We had this decent-sized manufacturer of signs, and they thought they were fine. They had an in-house IT guy, and he was managing the backups. And we found out that he was backing up the data to a SAN, and that SAN, the volume on the SAN that he was backing up the data to, that same SAN had some of the production servers. And for the technical people on this call, it was a RAID 5, and he reseated 2 hard drives, one after another, after he saw indicator lights that said that there was a predictive failure. So for the non-technical of you, that means that he just destroyed his data. He killed his backups, he killed his servers. And at that point, we were able to get the client to move to the solution that we had already told them about before their in-house IT guy told them that they were fine.
Great. That's
Yeah.
all I've got on
so
that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was a great moment. It was hard for us to help them with their recovery, but they learned that in the future that they should listen to us, and the in-house IT guy is gone now.
So we touched on this, and you gave us a great example previously of how you won a managed agreement from a business continuity cell. If you got any other solutions that are great stories you can share with us on how that happens?
As far as clients that we've picked up because we started through a DR sale?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we've got another law firm that we're working on right now. The first thing was coming in the door with the disaster recovery after their between their current managed service provider and their current IT guy. They had multiple instances of ransomware, I believe 3 times before they started working with us. So we explained to them how that ransomware doesn't affect us when we have a Datto in place. So we started with that, and we're still in process, but the other managed service provider that was there is being pushed out the door. We're working on putting in email security and email archiving, some project work, and having conversations with the managing partner about what the world would look like if they didn't have their in-house IT guy anymore. So there's once you get in with the disaster recovery, you become the hero, because every time that there's a major problem, they know that they can count on you, and they know that whatever they had in place, whether it was a managed service provider or in-house IT, obviously something happened that led them to talk to you. And the next time it happens, you show them how your advice has saved them. And every time moving forward that they have a challenge, they're going to say, well, the guys who put this data in, they gave us good advice before. Let's run this other situation past them, see what they know. And that's, we've got a 120-seat law firm that we're in that process right now. So it started with the Datto, and again, we're putting everything else in there.
So I think we can all take a shot now when I say, so you become the trusted advisor.
Yeah, you would say that. I also like to say superhero, though.
No, superhero works. I like that visual, too. So, Jeff, this one's all for you. Jim's shared a lot of information with our audience today on how he has used Datto to successfully position Hilltop to win business. How does Datto, specifically help Jim and help their partners win more business?
It's definitely a great question. Datto's the Datto partners that are on this call, you're aware that we are dedicated to not only helping you win more business, but supporting your business. Some high-level things that we do is, we're heavily invested in the SMB community. I mentioned Datto Drive earlier, we are continuing to support our MSPs by offering Datto Drive for free. On top of that, we we do have end user leads. So when an end user lead comes in, it's distributed, and that's been a big selling point or big win for the partners that have received them. Marketing materials are huge. A smaller managed service company does not have the time, the bandwidth, the resources to create documents to help sell their services. So, there's a slew of Datto pieces of content that are on our partner portal for you to take advantage of. On top of that, end user demos. So Datto knows Datto really well, and we have a support team here from our sales engineers to our partner success managers to our growth team that are here to, guide you along the way and be there when you need our support, technical expertise, or help.
Thanks, Jeff. And then Tracy, this last one's for you. How does Managed Sales Pros help their partners win more business?
Well, I don't know that we have quite enough time to go over all of that here, but let me give you a bit of a quick overview on some of our basic programs. And the first, of course, is our sales appointment setting program, which is a geographic specific owned by the MSP cold calling program. Its focus is 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month of cold calling. You get a project manager on our team, you get a dedicated caller who is based in North America, and that caller is well versed in managed services prospecting, and they go out and win opportunities for you in your targeted geographic area. You have some say into how that program runs, and it is solely designed to bring you cold opportunities. You continue to do your own in-house referral work with your own clients. We can help you with some of those. There are a lot of pieces coming out of that program on a marketing and a sales basis that we can help you with, but that is our core prospecting program, and anyone who wants some further information about that, of course, is going to be able to reach out to us afterwards. We'll get that information for you. And Jim pointed out something that we also do. Jim talked about events that he runs that are Datto specific. We also do programs to support sales and marketing efforts like that, call downs that we like to casually refer to them in offices butts and seats programs. So if you are running specific programming or you're being given some MDF funding, we can then support that by making sure that you have people attending those events.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to open up the floor for questions now. So I think that means that the box is going to pop up and over again. So I apologize that I haven't been able to figure this out yet, but all right, so we have some questions coming in already. If you have other questions for any of our panelists, if you want to ask Jim some more questions about how he's successfully growing his monthly recurring revenue, or if you've got some Datto specific questions for Jeff, they're both here for the next 12 minutes for you. So by all means, get those questions teed up. And if you have a question for Tracy on how our programs run, she's happy to answer those as well. So all of the questions so far are, will people receive copies of the slides? So yes, this will be posted up in our YouTube portal. It usually takes me a couple of days to get it up there, but it will be up there, and there will be an email follow-up after the event that will link to the information that we were discussing with Datto previously, the documents that are available to all Datto partners. So if you have questions, please go ahead and type them in now. I guess you guys did a really great job of explaining everything. All right, I'm going to stick around for like 30 more seconds. If anybody has anything they want to ask, now's the time. Okay, I do have a question for Jeff. In the Datto world, what is the biggest justification for the Cirrus pricing?
the justification for the Sears pricing, I would definitely like to get a little more context around that question. It definitely depends on the data size, data being stored in the cloud, for the amount of time it's being stored in the cloud, retention policies, etc.
John,
That
do you have
person,
something more specific that can you structure that question a little bit differently? At 8 terabytes, the Cirrus is about $10,000 to get going. Is this an offline discussion, John? Do you want me to connect you with Jeff directly after the webinar?
John, I can share my email address with you and anyone else that's on the webinar today. I'm happy to answer your question or help get your question answered. It's J, my last name, J Benedetti at datto.com. It's JBENEDETTI. Please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to help answer any and all questions.
Okay, and somebody is requesting the link for that MSPZ document. Do we want to send that afterwards, or is that an easy one to just rattle off, Jeff?
I mean, it's on the datto.com in our resources page. So our resource library.
Yeah, and Michael, I can make sure that that gets to you and everybody else on the call. With the email follow-up, I'll include that URL, so
Yep.
You'll have access to that.
Just to clarify, the MSPZ series, it's a content series along with a webinar series. So we just did one not last week, the week prior, on ransomware. It was a panel of our partners speaking on ransomware and how Datto can protect your end users' data. So it's pretty interesting, and it was highly attended.
Okay, so I will make
sure.
So
that's just one example of the. Sorry, that's just one example of the MSPZ webinar series.
So here's a great question. What industries should we target first? Who is more at risk? So, Jim, let's start with you on that one. If you were going to rattle off 3 verticals to begin with, I mean, obviously we know that legal is your first area of expertise. What are the 2 that you would go after that?
I love the legal vertical, but not everybody cut out to deal with it. I'll say that. But we like legal, we like financial, we like professional services, we like trade associations. I'll give that one. But not everybody has a lot of trade associations like I have here in Washington, D.C. You really have to take a look at your area. Where are you in the country? I could tell you to go after lawyers, but you may be in an area that doesn't have a lot of lawyers. So you have to take a look at what's available. But go after verticals where time is money, where they understand the value of having this solution in place because the cost of their downtime is so high. And that's, one of the reasons that we target the legal vertical. But I understand that people in New York, they're working with a lot of financial services, hedge funds, and they're getting premium rates out of these clients because they understand what the cost of their downtime is. So that's the best advice that I can give.
So we like to describe that here as technology dependent or technology strategic. So when you're thinking about where you'd like to aim the cannon, think about first the organizations that are a 1-to-1 ratio of computers to employees, right? Transportation, for example, lots of employees, not a lot of computers there, right? Although that may change with Internet of Things and the ability to do geofencing, and there's all kinds of other interesting applications that you might be able to suggest to a transportation company, but that's all kind of long-term 8 quarters from now planning versus like you've got 100 employees and only 3 of them have a computer in front of you. Not a great place to begin. So we find most often here when we're pulling data out of our online portals, for example, we're going to aim for things that are primarily service-based. We tend to, like, if you're going to structure a list to purchase, you want to go for things that are not subsidiaries. So you don't want to waste a lot of phone calls only to be told, oh, our head office is located here. So eliminate anybody that's a subsidiary. We usually quickly eliminate anybody that's publicly traded, right? They're going to be a piece of a much bigger puzzle, and likely they're going to have that handled in-house. So you want to take your highest percentage shot at a close. So you're going to be looking for companies that are service-based with a 1-to-1 ratio, and usually pull out all weird manufacturing firms aren't a great place to begin usually, because they've got strange custom software that they've purchased from places that get serviced by the people that they purchased it from. We've got all kinds of resources here at Managed Sales Pros to guide you in pulling the best list for your sales prospecting programs. And again, we'll be happy to share those with you after the event as well. So we've got a couple minutes left. Would anyone like to ask any more questions? And if not, Jeff, have you got any parting thoughts for us today?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was a pleasure being on the webinar today, and went over a lot of the things that Datto does to support our partners, but I just can't echo enough that it's really the partner focus that separates Datto, and whatever the need is of our specific partner is what we try to satisfy, what we try to accomplish. I mentioned my email earlier. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, comments. Always happy to chat.
Great, and we'll make sure to get that information to you on that follow-up email after the event as well. I did have one more question come in for you, Jeff, and that is, can an American business host their backup in Canada?
Can an American business host their backup in Canada? So Datto does have data centers in Canada. We would like to, before I answer the question yes or no, definitely like to understand more of the logistics around what this organization is looking to accomplish. So
that is very much a how long is a piece of string question then. And Jonathan, please reach out to Jeff, and I'm sure that he can clarify that for you. Jim, how about you? Any parting thoughts for our audience today?
Well, just going back to the question regarding the pricing for the Cirrus, it reminds me of a joke that I heard recently. It was, why are divorces so expensive? Because they're worth it. Now, just here's my thing on this. Often when I hear people asking that question, I'm often afraid that they're asking the wrong questions and that they're approaching their sales in a way that I wouldn't. Yes, it's not the cheapest piece of hardware in the world, and it's not the cheapest service. But remember that if you're selling this properly and you're getting the proper margin levels when you're selling the service and the hardware, you should be making money on this. And whether it's 35% or 50% margin, the cost of the product to you shouldn't be that impactful. As long as you're selling the right product to the right client, you're going to make more money doing this. So just whenever I hear that question about somebody asking about the price, I just always worry that the conversation has started at the wrong spot. So I'll leave it to other people to follow up on that. But we're able to sell an awful lot of Cirrus servers. We sell more Cirrus than we do Alto. We make great margin on it, and the clients are never complaining about the price when you've just recovered their servers and they're not sitting idle for an entire day because you sold them an inferior backup solution.
That's a huge point. Coming from an organization like ours where our whole business is built around data, having no data means I have no business. So, I certainly see the value in that. I have a question for us. Does Managed Sales Pros charge per lead generated or per campaign? And the answer to that, Richard, is both. We have two alternatives for you. When you pay a flat rate for your program. You own all of the data associated with it. So every dial that we make on behalf of your MSP, and you own all the information that we learn. And we also offer a pay per performance or pay per lead program where you do not get to keep any of the information that we learn on the calls, but we do sell you sales appointments as we uncover them in your market. And those are non-exclusive programs. You rotate through different markets with other providers, and I'm happy to give you more information about either of those programs afterwards. Tracy, any parting comments?
I don't think so. I am going to be available for follow-up, so definitely reach out to us. We'll call you back.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Really always a pleasure to see a webinar where all of the attendees stay on for the whole time. So Jim, Jeff, thank you so much for being a captivating group today, and I will look forward to following up with everybody after the event. Thanks again. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.